Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Varsity Tutors StarCourse series, where if you've joined us in any of our past classes with Wonders of Wildlife, you already know that we've talked about animals of all kinds, from carnivores to herbivores, those who live on land and those who call the sea their home. And today we're going to learn about the most magnificent, most majestic, and most massive marine mammals out there, whales. And before we embark on our deep dive into these deep sea creatures, I want to make sure that we are prepared to collaborate and make the most of today's live lesson. So we're going to have some opportunities to test our knowledge today, and you may find that you have some questions along the way as well. So feel free to use the chat on the right-hand side of your screen to ask and answer questions throughout the lesson. If we don't get to those questions immediately, not to worry, we'll save a couple of minutes at the very end of today's lesson specifically for Q&A. And as we move through, hopefully you'll learn something new today. And if you do so, you're welcome to choose your favorite social media site and tag us and Wonders of Wildlife to share something you learned. And with that, we'll get started with the learning. And I'm going to go ahead and pass things over to Wonders of Wildlife's Sarah Mobley.
Hello, everyone. Like Haley said, my name is Sarah Mobley, and I'm a lead educator here at Wonders of Wildlife. Before we get started, I want to welcome everybody. And I also want to know where you guys are located at today. Where is everyone from? If you guys don't mind using that chat box and tell me what your name is and where you are from today. I see a lot of answers coming in. Hello. I see people from Colorado. I see people from Illinois, Texas. Yeah. I see a few Missourians in there. Welcome. I see so many of you guys all over the United States today. I am so happy to have everyone here. And now that you guys know now that I know where you guys are, let me tell you where I am. So I live in Springfield, Missouri. So Missouri is sometimes called the Show Me State, but here at Wonders of Wildlife, we take that nickname to a whole new level. So here at Wonders of Wildlife, it is a completely immersive experience into the environments of the world. From ocean to land, we have 1.5 miles of exhibits to see and over 800 different species to learn about. And we have so much more to share and see here at Wonders of Wildlife. I thank you so much for being here with me today. And are we ready to learn about some whales? That's what I thought. So I do have a question for you guys. What makes a whale a whale? What makes a whale a whale? If you guys don't mind typing in that chat box for me, is it the way that they swim? Is it how big they are? Is it what they eat? I'm seeing a lot of great guesses out there. So all whales are marine mammals. And more specifically, whales are cetaceans, and cetaceans are a group of marine mammals. So marine mammals are split up into 4 different groups. So we have pinnipeds, and pinnipeds are going to be your sea lions and your sea otters. Even walruses are pinnipeds. You're going to have your sirenians, which are your manatees. You're also going to have your marine finnipeds, which are polar bears and sea otters. And then you're going to have your sirenians, which are whales, dolphins, and porpoises as well. So there's the 4 groups of marine mammals. So in order to be a mammal, you have to have some specific characteristics. Can you guys tell me in that chat box, what are some characteristics mammals have? What do we have as humans, as mammals? I'm seeing a lot of really awesome answers out there. What makes a mammal a mammal? So there are so many different characteristics on what makes a mammal, but there's always a few main ones that we think about when we're thinking about what makes a mammal a mammal. The first one is it has warm blood. Second one is they also have fur or hair. And then the third one is they breathe air. So believe it or not, whales have hair on their bodies. So in that picture that you see, they have little tiny hairs on their nose. So now that we know the 4 groups of marine mammals and their characteristics, let's dive into some species of whales. So since whales breathe air, and that of course means that they're not fish, right? Because fish have gills, and we know that those whales are marine mammals. Do you guys know how they breathe air? How do they breathe air in that chat box for me? Yeah, you guys all got it. They're blowholes, right? So we've all seen a video of a whale coming up and they kind of just squirt water out of that blowhole, right? Well, what if I told you that they're not actually squirting up water? They're not blowing up that water with the blowhole. They're blowing up air and they're breathing. So normally the air is normal than the air outside of their body. So our bodies are really warm because we're warm-blooded animals. So the air inside is a little bit warmer than the air outside. So what happens is those whales exhale and they breathe out and in, and that colder air on the outside of the body mixes with the warm air on the other side, and it makes water. It condensates and it makes water. And that's why it looks like those whales are blowing water out of their blowholes, because they kind of are making water, but they're breathing at the same time, which I think is pretty cool. So before we get started talking about some of our whale species that we're going to talk about today, I have another question. So my question for you guys is, do you have a favorite whale species? What is your favorite whale species? Type in that chat box on if you have a favorite whale species. And if you don't, that's okay. Hopefully we'll get one by the end of our stream today. You can always tell me your favorite marine animal too, if you don't have a favorite whale just yet. That's totally okay. I'm seeing a lot of really good answers in the chat. I see a few of you guys sharing the same favorites. Blue whales, orcas, yeah. I'm seeing a few of my favorite whale too. A few of you guys don't have a favorite whale yet, that's okay. We really like sea otters, yeah. Awesome. Well, before I tell you my favorite whale, I want to talk about the 2 types of whales. So we already know whales are marine mammals, and marine mammals are split up into 4 different categories. Whales are split up into then 2 more categories. So we have baleen whales and we have toothed whales. So all whales are divided up into those 2 categories, and they're pretty easy to tell apart for the most part. So if you are a toothed whale, you of course have teeth. And if you are a baleen whale, you have a filtering feeding system in their mouth, and it's called baleen, and it is made out of keratin, like your hair and your fingernails are made out of. So what those filtering systems do is they are going to take a big gulp of water into their mouth. They are then going to push that water out, and all of those fish are going to get stuck in their mouth, and that filtering system is going to be able to filter out all of that water that they don't necessarily want. Toothed whales are known to be really good hunters, and toothed whales, because they can chew their food, they normally eat bigger fish, and then they normally hunt for their food as well. While baleen whales, since they're taking big gulps of fish and they're not really chewing, they eat little tiny fish. So really tiny krill or other small schooling fish like herring. And they'll just take that big gulp of water and then filter out all the stuff that they don't want to eat out of those baleen plates. So are you guys ready to see a few different pictures of baleen whales versus toothed whales? And you guys think you can test your knowledge with a little pop quiz on which one is which? So I am going to pull up this first picture of this whale. And do you guys have any guesses on if that is a baleen whale or if that is a toothed whale. Type in that chat box on which one do you think that is. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of great answers. There's only two choices. So you got a 50 and 50 chance. Yeah, so this is a humpback whale, and they are baleen whales. Perfect. So you can see there, this is kind of a really hard picture to see their really long baleen plates. So our next picture is going to be of another whale. Is this whale a toothed whale or a baleen whale? What do we think? Yeah, I can't really get anything past you guys. This is a baleen whale. So they kind of look like little tiny teeth, but this is a gray whale, and they have those really long baleen plates onto them. They are filter feeders. Okay, my last whale I'm going to show you. Oh, this one's an easy one. Yeah. You can see all of his teeth. So if you can see all of his teeth, he is, of course, a toothed whale. Excellent job, everyone. So I never told you what my favorite whale species was. So I'll give you a little bit of a hint. It was one of those three whales in that pop quiz. I can get a drum roll. It is a beluga whale. It was the last whale that we talked about in that pop quiz. Those are my favorite whales, which is why we're going to talk about them first today. So beluga whales live in really cold Arctic waters, and they are known to be really white or light gray in color to kind of blend in with their environments, because what's in Arctic waters? Yeah, icebergs, right? So they're able to blend in with their water by having that white coloration to them. They also are sometimes called the canaries of the sea. So this is because they make really, really high-pitched whistling and squealing sounds. So they make these really high-pitched sounds, and they can even be heard above the water. So they are super loud, but we will talk about a louder whale here in a little bit. But they're sometimes called the canary of the sea. It's a way for them to communicate with each other. Belugas also have a very special body part. And can you guys guess in the chat what their very special body part is? So I'll give you a hint. It kind of helps them with their vocals. It helps them. Yeah, I'm seeing really good guesses. It is called their melon. So if you guessed a melon, you are correct, and not the fruit. The melon on a beluga is the round bump that you see on their head. So it kind of looks a little funny. He has a really big forehead, but it is a round structure on the beluga's head that is filled with fats and lipids. So it is very soft and movable and squishy. And just like bats, they use this melon sometimes for echolocation signals through the water to help them find each other and communicate. When they make these signals, their melons, they change shapes. So would you guys like for whenever, every time you talked, your head changed shapes? I don't know if I would like that too much, but belugas, they use those melons to communicate vocals and echolocation to each other, which is pretty cool. So moving on from an all-white toothed whale, we are going to talk about a black and white toothed whale. Do you guys have any guesses in the chat on what our next whale might be? They're black and they're white and they have teeth. We saw a picture of them a little bit earlier ago, but I didn't talk about them too much. Yeah. So if you guessed a orca, you are correct. So we are going to talk about orcas, and orcas can be found in every single ocean, and they live all around the world. Orcas are super duper smart animals, and they are known to hunt in packs. So kind of like wolves and lions, Orcas normally live in pods and they will hunt in those pods. They are super great hunters and they're able to swim 33.5 miles an hour. So to give you a little bit of a reference, humans can only swim about 3 to 4, and that's really fast. So normally we're swimming about 2 miles an hour, but belugas can swim 33, which is crazy. So that makes them really awesome hunters. And then they have those teeth and they're able to eat those bigger fish, right? So I'm sure you guys have all heard of belugas being called killer whales, which is a nickname that they have. And it was given to them by ancient sailors that saw them hunting in those packs together. And they were able to take down animals that were much bigger than them. So orcas sometimes hunt other whales, and they can hunt whales that are bigger than them because they hunt in those packs. Just like wolves are able to hunt big moose because they're hunting in those packs, or lions are able to hunt, giraffes or small elephants because they are working together as a team. And so that's what orcas do, and that's why they're able to hunt those prey items that are bigger than them. So we here at Wonders of Wildlife have our own little pod of orcas. So you can see in those pictures there that we have 3 replica orcas. These guys are made out of plastic and they hang from our ceilings here in the aquarium. So I do have 2 more whales that I do want to talk about with us today. But before we get started with our really cool activity, so I'm going to move on to our next whale that I also don't have to go super duper far to see because we have this whale right here in the aquarium as well. So this next whale is a humpback whale. So I'm pretty sure all of us have heard of a humpback whale before. Oops. So humpback whales, what type of whale are they? Do you guys have any guesses in the chat on, is a humpback whale a baleen whale or a tooth whale? We talked about it in the pop quiz. Do you guys remember? Yeah, you're right. So humpback whales are baleen whales, and their main diet is krill and really small schooling fish like we talked about earlier. So just like beluga whales, humpback whales have some really cool vocals and sounds as well. People like to say that they sing songs and they can be heard 20 miles away in the water, which is crazy. I definitely, if I screamed or I sang, no one could hear me 20 miles away. But beluga whales, I keep going back to beluga whales because they're my favorite. Humpback whales are the whales that we normally see breaching the water, meaning that they jump out of the water and they slap the surface of the water with their tails and their fins. Do you guys have any guesses in the chat on why they jump out of the water? Do you guys have any guesses on why humpback whales would take all that time to jump out of the water? You see really good guesses out there. So to be honest with you, your guess is as good as mine. So scientists are still studying why humpback whales are still jumping out of the water. So some scientists think that it's a way of communicating, making a splash and communicating to the other humpback whales in the area that something is going on. Some scientists think that they just do it for fun. It's kind of fun for us to jump in the water, right, off of a diving board. So maybe it's fun for whales to jump out of the water. But you guys are great scientists for having your own hypothesis on why those humpback whales jump out of the water, because our scientists are also still studying that reason. So here at WOW, you can see in our bottom picture that we have a replica of a mom and her calf humpback whale. So humpback whales are really awesome moms, and their calves normally stay with them for about a year or two. So they're able to teach their young on where the best fishing spots are and migration seasons. So we have a mom and a calf humpback whale also hanging from our ceiling here at Wonders of Wildlife. So I now saved the biggest whale that we have for last. So if you guys have any guesses in the chat box on what our last whale species is that we are going to talk about. I gave you a little bit of a hint. It is the largest whale species out there. It's actually the largest animal out there ever. Yeah, I see a lot of good guesses out there. It is the blue whale. So blue whales are the largest species of whale, and they're actually the largest animals on the planet. Do you guys have any guesses on how much a blue whale weighs? It's a really hard one. It's a really big number. Yeah. See a lot of good guesses out there. 1 million. Oh my goodness. Yeah. They weigh 400,000 pounds. So to kind of give you guys an estimate on how much that is about 33 elephants. So 33 elephants put all together to make one big blue whale. Now, they also are the longest animal. So they can reach feet up to 98 feet long. That's like 20 cars put together. That's super duper long. It definitely would not fit here at Wonders of Wildlife. But even though they are the largest and the longest animal, they eat the littlest, tiniest food. So whales are baleen eaters. They're baleen whales, which means they filter out their food, right? And they eat little tiny krill. So because they have all of this body to feed, they eat up to 40 million krill a day, which is a lot of krill. That's like us eating 40 million shrimp a day. I could not do that. So besides being the largest and the longest species, they are also the loudest species. I told you we were going to get to a louder species than beluga, right? So their vocals are measured to be 188 decimals, which is louder than a jet engine. So they are the biggest and the loudest and the longest, and they're pretty cool. So now there is one thing that all of these whales have in common that I haven't talked about yet. So do you guys have any guesses in the chat on what belugas and orcas, humpback whales, and blue whales all have in common? It's a little tricky because I haven't mentioned it at all. So in that chat box, can you guys give me your best guesses on what all of these whales have in common? I'm seeing a lot of really awesome guesses out there. They all have fins. They all swim. Yeah, they of course all have eyes. Yeah, these are all really great guesses, and they are all very, very true. I guess a lot of you, I see a few of the answers that I'm looking for. Yeah, so you guys are all right in your guesses. However, the answer that I was looking for was blubber. So who has heard of blubber, right? We've all heard of blubber. Awesome. So blubber is the really thick layer of fat that is right beneath the skin of marine mammals. So not only do whales have them, but sea lions have blubbers, and seals and walruses. They all have blubber to keep them warm, right? That's why they all look a little round and plump, right? Because that's all their blubber. So this helps them stay buoyant as well. So when you're out swimming you are able to stay afloat because that fat, that blubber is going to float, and it helps them store energy, like proteins and fats as well. So having that blubber also helps them not use as much energy while they're swimming, like fish do whenever they don't have blubber. And that helps them be able to hunt longer and swim longer distances, because whales migrate and swim. And so do all of those other marine mammals. So blubber is a really awesome adaptation that those marine mammals have. So I did kind of hint that we were going to have a little bit of an experiment today. So for our experiment, I am going to create blubber, or kind of create blubber. So I am going to replicate blubber on how it works with these animals. So if you aren't doing this experiment with me at home today, that is totally okay. You can watch, you can just watch me, that is totally fine. But I am going to pull over my little table so it's a little bit better in view, and go over what I'm going to use for this experiment, and then we are going to get started. So I am going to pull this in right here, and I have a bowl of water that I am going to put some ice in. So this is super duper cold. And I'm gonna put a whole bunch of ice inside of this water and let that water get really, really cold while I go over our other materials. I also have a spoon. I have some cooking Crisco with me. I then have 2 Ziploc bags. So what I'm going to do is, my cooking fat is going to be my blubber. It's really thick and it's really fatty. So we are going to scoop up this cooking oil. And this cooking fat can be really, really messy. So I'm being real careful. And we are going to carefully fill up our first Ziploc bag with this fat, our blubber. Get a lot of fat in there. Uh-oh, that's okay. We're gonna put a lot of blubber in there. Perfect. So then I have all of my fat in my Ziploc bag. And because I don't want to get my hands all messy, because this stuff can be really hard to wash off, I am going to stick my hand into another Ziploc bag. So that way I have kind of like a little glove on my hand. And that way it doesn't get all messy. Now, this fat has kind of been in the fridge for a little bit, so it's a little cold, but I am just going to stick my hand all around and smush it around my hand. And luckily, my hand isn't getting all messy because it's in this bag, in my little glove, right? Perfect. So now my whole hand is covered in my blubber, and we are going to see if it works. So I am going to stick my hand that has no blubber into the water, and then I'm also going to stick my hand that has all of my blubber into it also in the water, and we can see which one lasts the longest in the water. So if you are ready, I am ready. So my water is really cold, and I am going to stick my hand in the water, and then I'm going to stick my other hand in the water, And my hand that has no blubber on it is starting to already get really, really cold because of this ice. And I don't know if I can keep it in here very longer. I do not do well with cold water. But my hand that has the blubber on it, it just feels like it's not even in water at all. I can't feel the water. I can't feel how cold it is. It's kind of like installation in our house is the way that you can think about it. But it's installation. This is really, really cold. So it's kind of like installation for our bodies instead. So just like animals that live on land, that live in cold environments, they have what? Really thick fur. Any dogs at home have really thick double coats of fur. But because they have to swim and they live in that water, they use blubber instead of fur. But I feel like I could have my hand in this ice water all day, all night, because that is how awesome blubber is. So I am going to push back over my table for a little bit. And dry my hands off on my pants because I didn't bring a towel and that's okay. But I felt like I could have my hand in there forever. But now that we have a better understanding on how animals like whales with blubbers stay warm, we are going to talk about a few different things as well. So we have talked about a lot of really awesome animals today, and we talked about a lot of important animals as well. So all the animals that we talked about are either vulnerable, nearly threatened, or endangered. And yes, I know that it can be sometimes really sad to think about those animals being endangered, but I have a few different things that I want to talk to you about today so that you can help those whales and those other marine mammals right at home. So here at Wonders of Wildlife, we like to practice the 3 R's. So the 3 R's are reduce, reuse, and recycle. So the first R is reduce. So reduce is a very simple term for trying to use less of one-use items. So one-use plastics, plastic water bottles, plastic shopping bags, and instead trying to use reusable stuff. So there is 5.2 trillion micro pieces of plastic in our oceans currently. So if you and I and everyone in the world carries our own water bottles, or we take our own plastic, we take our own reusable bags to the grocery store, we are reducing that waste and reducing those plastics in the ocean. Sometimes this is hard. Sometimes I forget to bring my bags to the grocery store, and that's okay. It doesn't make us bad people. But we want to always try to use those reusable items and reduce that waste. So that brings me to my next one, which is reuse, which is similar in the aspect of reducing. But if you accidentally bring you forget your bags to the grocery store, or you're at the park and you forget your water bottle and you need to get a plastic water bottle, that's okay. But instead of throwing it away immediately, taking it back home and filling it back up with water. Or instead of throwing away your trash bags or your plastic shopping bags, reusing them for a trash bag or putting something else in. I take all of my plastic bags and I use them for trash bags, or I put my cat's litter in it whenever I take it out. So I always try to make sure that I use those 2 or 3 times if I can. But if we all kind of reduce that waste and then reuse it when we have that waste, we can make a difference. So that brings me to my third one, which is recycling. So recycle. Recycling can be also reusing, but it can be collecting those bottles and those bags and even cans. I keep my marinara cans, like my spaghetti sauce jars, and taking them to your local recycling center where they will take them and they will make them into something else. But you can recycle at home too by just taking those plastic water bottles and like that picture had, those little planting, you can plant little sprouts in and then you can repurpose those water bottles. That's recycling, that's reusing, and that's reducing. So by just that one action, you are hitting all three of those R's and you are making a difference. So everything is connected. I'm connected to you guys and we all live downstream from each other. So those little tiny small things that you do at home that you may not think makes a difference, I promise you it makes a difference. You keeping that one plastic bag, that's one less plastic bag in the ocean. And that makes a huge difference for those huge animals like the whales that we talked about today. So I know that you guys have had some really awesome questions out there. And if you are ready, I am ready to answer some.
All right, we've had some really wonderful questions. And the first one that I'm going to ask is very relevant to some of the stuff that you just mentioned, because we spoke a lot about how we can help our environment, how we can help even these great big species like these whales. But we had some students who were wondering, why is it so important that these whales be in, a safe environment in the ocean? Why is it so important that we avoid the pollution to their environments? What is it that makes these whales so special?
Yeah, that is an awesome question, guys. So whales are one of the animals that are pretty much at the top of their food chain. So without them, the whole balance of the ocean will be off. So whales eat krill, and krill eat plankton. So if we didn't have whales that didn't eat the krill would take over the ocean and eat all of the plankton. And then there would be no more plankton for the whale or for the krill to eat. And then all of the krill will die. So having those keystone animals like whales that are so important to those food chains are so important to our oceans and to us, and having water. Whales also help play a really big role in the air that we breathe. So plankton, which are the little tiny bottom of the food chain animals, they produce carbon, and whales are able to play a role in capturing that carbon from the air. And we don't breathe carbon, right? We breathe oxygen. So not having those whales around could also affect our air quality, which is really crazy to think about. But that just shows you that everything is connected. And that's why those whales are so important. And as much as, it's sad to think about, but we always have to try to do our best to protect those animals that are so important to us.
Awesome. Absolutely. Now, we also had some very observant students who noticed that we were talking about how all of these whales have blubber, but who were curious. And I think we had a couple of hints in our slide deck today. Are there any other animals that also have blubber? So we had some very specific questions around whether penguins or dolphins or walruses or any other animals. So maybe just broadly speaking, what, if any, other animals have blubber and how do they use it?
Yeah, definitely. So there are many animals out there that have blubber. The ones that we specifically think about normally are those marine mammals, or mammals and birds that live in those really cold Arctic areas. So penguins, they do have a form of blubber, but they also have their feathers that can keep them warm as well. But walruses and sea lions and seals, they all have blubber. Dolphins, which we really didn't talk about too much, but they are a species of smaller whales, and they do have blubber as well. And so do porpoises, which are even a smaller species of dolphin that are within that whale group, that marine mammal group. So there are so many animals out there that have blubber. And we as humans have fat and lipid that's not necessarily as thick as blubber, but our fat keeps us warm as well because we're mammals.
Very cool. Now, we also, again, very observant students today, noticed a little bit of a trend where some of our biggest whales were some of the ones eating the smallest prey, and some of our smaller whales were the ones who went after some of the larger prey. Could you talk to us a little bit about why that might be?
Yeah. So you guys are always on top of it with the questions. So that is a good question. And it's sometimes hard to answer, but the bigger you are, normally the slower you are, right? When you think of an elephant, you don't really think of a really fast animal. So being able to catch all of those little tiny krill in one big swallow so that you're not out swimming and trying to hunt for small food since you're so big, it's just a convenience thing. And then whenever your toothed whales are normally your smaller whales, you can have sperm whales or toothed whales that are pretty big, but they're able to swim faster because they're smaller, and then they're able to catch that food. But you guys are very observant. It's a convenience thing, and it's easy. If I could just sit there and hang out and have a big swarm of krill come up to me and that was my dinner, I would pick that over hunting any day.
I think you're probably not alone there. And we spoke, I think, in some past classes about other cases where surprisingly larger animals maybe ate smaller prey or ate in such a way that they didn't have to go looking for food, and the food sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely a trend, not just with whales and animals that live in the water, but animals that live on land as well.
Awesome. Now, these are some pretty great big animals. So we also had some students who were wondering what it is that could possibly threaten an animal so big. So we're saying they're at the top of the food chain. What is it that could maybe make a whale fearful?
Yeah. So we kind of hit on one of their predators a little bit, which was the orcas. So orcas are going to be their main animal predator out there. And orcas are going to hunt those really old whales that are swimming really slow, or unfortunately, those babies that might accidentally get lost from their mother. But a big threat to whales are unfortunately us. So whales can be victim to bycatch, which is being caught in the nets that we hunt our fish with and that we fish with. There are also people that unfortunately poach whales for their meat and their blubber. So overhunting and that bycatch, and also the pollution that we were talking about a little bit earlier, can affect them as well, because that pollution affects the whole food chain, right? So those animals that are maybe eating those plastics and dying off can affect those whales, and it's a threat to them as well.
Wow. So even if we may not be out actively trying to hurt these whales, we probably want to make sure we're being careful around the way that we interact with garbage and the way that we interact with the world around us. And that brings me to my next question. And that is, what else can we do if we're interested in helping whales, in helping marine life, or in helping our environment as a whole? You gave us some really wonderful suggestions already. Do you have any other final advice for students looking to become more involved or learn more?
Definitely. So if the ocean and if whales, even just other marine mammals, are something that you at home are super duper passionate about, I first will always suggest research. I will suggest that you go and do all of your research. If you are like, hey, beluga whales are my favorite whales too, Sarah, and I am going to do all of my research on how their melons work and what type of food they eat, that is always your first start. Your second start is to volunteer. So you can volunteer anywhere, even if you can volunteer at home through nonprofit organizations that support whales. And you can even go out and adopt whales and donate money to credible organizations. And all of that money will go to help saving those whale populations. But even if you are landlocked like me, you can volunteer your time online doing, research and citizen scientist projects with those scientists that are out on the water with those whales and helping saving those whale populations. So anything that you can do really helps.
Wonderful. And then we had lots of students, after taking a look at some of the pictures that we saw at Wonders of Wildlife, who were wondering what other sorts of animals are under your care there. So as kind of our final question for today, could you tell us a little bit more about the aquarium, some of the animals that you'd find there, and potentially some that we've learned about before or might be learning about next?
Yeah. So the animals that I showed you, the whales that I showed you, of course, aren't alive. They are replicas. They're made out of plastic. But here in the aquarium, we have many live animals as well. So we have a whole bunch of different species of fish. We have blue tangs, and we have parrotfish. We have a whole bunch of eels, and we have moray eels. We have a whole bunch of groupers as well for the fish category. We also have sea turtles. We talked about some of our sea turtles before, and we also have birds of prey. So we have a bald eagle that we might be kind of talking about a little bit later, maybe next month, to give you a little preview. But we have some alligators, which are always my favorite. We talked about those, but we have 800 different species of animals. So sometimes it's a little hard for me to keep up with all of them. But we have a variety of fish and reptiles and birds. We have a little bit of everything.
Wow, well, that's definitely understandable. That sounds like a lot to explore at Wonders of Wildlife. And as Sarah mentioned, we hope you'll join us for a little bit of a sneak peek into next month's lesson. So by all means, feel free to check out the recordings of lessons that we've gone through together so far. Definitely feel free to join us next time. In the meantime, thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you to everyone who tuned in and asked such wonderful and specific and thoughtful questions. We do hope to see you back next time. And in the meantime, feel free to post and share something that you learned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.